Westhoff. I am a resident of Littleton. Today I am pleased to be seated beside my friend Rob Hartz. He is a long-time resident of Littleton, one of the founding members of our Spectacle Pond Association, the full name being the Spectacle Pond Association of Littleton and Area. Today we're really here to talk about the history of the association, the reason for its formation. You know, we live on a very beautiful and serene pond, but little is known about, I would say, a dramatic history. The reason for the associations being, and you know, Rob, you are in the best position to tell us what happened because you were the first president of the association.
Correct.
So, hello, Rob.
Hello, Joan. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Happy to have you. Rob, tell us, you know, what was the main reason that made you, you and the rest of the founding members, you know, form the association? Right. What really ignited that reason to step up to this role? Which year was it, and what was the reason?
Sure. Well, again, this was we're going back to 1998, and there were a couple of reasons. And just as background, I do work in leadership and organizational development, and so what I've learned in that work is that often things happen because there are core challenges. You don't just say, let's form an organization today and we'll put in a lot of time and it'll be really nice. You have to have good reasons for organization, and we had two primary catalysts at that time. The first one was about the weeds. Every pond in Littleton, and probably every pond in eastern Massachusetts, or in the eastern part of the country, faces a lot of weeds like milfoil, fanwort that grow and grow and grow, and it was exponential growth of those weeds that had everybody in our pond very concerned. How do we protect and preserve this pond when we have this massive growth, which we'll get to Leon Weaver will speak to that in a future session. But I'd like to speak a little bit about the second catalyst, which was a large railroad. It was the sometime called Boston and Maine, sometime called Guilford, sometime called Pan Am Railroad, that was proposing to build an auto unloading facility of 56 acres, which is fine, except that they were wanting to place it right on a protected, environmentally sensitive area at the end of Spectacle Pond, in the air side of it. So with that in mind, we've said, we have some real issues. If we're going to protect this pond, we have to deal with the weeds. We have to be aware of the politics and the economic forces that are going to affect our ability to have clean water, because underneath this pond is an important aquifer that feeds both Littleton and Air. That's our drinking water, and private wells around the pond. So this matters greatly.
Yeah, directly impacts the health.
Right. So we gathered at the water department, and we had about 35 people from both Littleton and Air who were concerned about both these issues mostly, and we then divided into working groups, and we had a group that Leon headed for weeds, and I headed the one on how do we address the concerns that the railroad project might do, if it was going to happen. It was just out there in the air that this could happen. So that was the kind of the setup, is that we then incorporated in 1999, and I became president, Leon became vice president, and we began our work from there.
So the issue was railroad company wants to build a new facility next to the pond on top of an aquifer, which directly impacts the quality of the water if that were to happen.
Correct.
How then did you try to have it? Did you try to have the project cancelled? Did you try to have it relocated to another part of town?
We did. We were not against auto unloading per se, because they had a facility down off of this area. And we said, why don't you just build there? So we're trying to be very reasonable and just say, you know what, we have no problem with the whole notion. It's just that the area that you picked is particularly sensitive. And
maybe somewhere else other than our water source.
but exactly. But no other company could have done this, because local law and national law would keep a company, you and I could not do this, but because they were a railroad, this gave them special privileges, and they were using that special privilege to actually build in a place that should not be built on.
They had representatives.
They did.
Right? Could you describe the tone and the attitude of the representative from the railroad company?
That's a great question, because that's really kind of the reason I got involved, and I think others did, because we went to a town hall meeting in Air. The facility would be built in Air. And their attorney spoke, and he stood up, and he was a big bear of a man, and he said, I'm here to represent the railroad, and what you need to know is that the railroad does not have to listen to any local laws. None. No state laws, and most federal laws. We're exempt. So I'm here to take your question. It was just very arrogant and very upsetting for people to say, you mean our voice means nothing, as that was the tone and that was the intent. You have no say in this. It's your drinking water, but we're going to do what we're going to do. So a lot of us were out in the hallway saying, this can't happen. But I was kind of not too upset, because I thought EPA will come in and they'll look at this, and it seemed unreasonable.
Yeah.
It'll put us.
It seems very obvious.
Yeah, or our local Department of Environmental Protection in Massachusetts will put a stop to it. There's someone that's going to say no.
Yeah.
And we just need to find them and put the issue in front of them. So that was our work. We just called them and said, look, this is happening, and we need you
escalate this.
We
Let
will
the higher
escalate
orders
it.
know.
We're just do a little bit of education and keep sending documents and let them figure it out. Well, that was our effort, and well, it didn't. There was a lot of sympathy, but they couldn't actually act on it, because for the same reasons, the laws are the laws.
So which agencies did you approach?
Well, we started with the Department of Environmental Protection, and we met the regional director, very nice guy, and then we met the general counsel for EPA for our region. Also, smart guys, people that have a lot of experience, but they were hesitant. They were, on our side, I felt, but hesitant to act for various reasons.
They understood the issue.
They understood the issue very well. And they also understand railroads and railroad powers and railroads' ability to intimidate, because that's another thing that was happening. The railroad was actually, the town of Air was actually doing its best, a very small town, trying to stop this, and the railroad would then sue all the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Health. All the members are being
very
sued.
aggressive.
So it's an aggressive tactic, which all really helped our resolve, because these are people we know, people we like, and they're being attacked by this railroad for actually doing their job, trying to protect their source of water, as a health department should.
Yeah.
So that was the challenge, and we then realized this is a legal issue, so we started reaching out to Conservation Law Foundation, who was very helpful, and they brought in Ropes and Gray, a large attorney. So we're looking at what are our legal options, but there were very few, and so we were largely disappointed, but still concerned.
If I were in that situation, I would have found it so crippling, right? To depend on federal agencies, state agencies, only to have them back away because, they were afraid of going up against a railroad company. And this was 1998, where railroads really had a lot of power and say
Still do,
and sway, right? But it's so heartwarming that you and the other neighbor, the residents, rose up to the occasion, because number one, it concerned your living, and number two, you said you stood up because the railroad company started suing people and your friends.
Right.
So
their aggressiveness really kind of tipped the scale for me, at least. And I have to say, we were a tiny group. There were maybe 5 people meeting at a kitchen table, just trying to figure out what to do. And so we looked at various tactics, various ways. We'll get to that in a future session. But I think the picture is that we have no money. None of us are lawyers. We're just average citizens, and we're just trying to figure out how, I guess, what really was driven home here was we're the ones. There's nobody else out there, not these large agencies that we depend on, not our Attorney General, not anyone who is going to step in and stop this. If it's going to stop, it'll be up to the five of us and others that will join us.
And I know from doing some background research too that you tried everything. You wrote to senators, you wrote to congressmen, you even leveraged on a protected species. Tell us about that species.
Right. Where we're looking for what laws do apply. And so very few, but we did find that there was a law about protected species. And we quickly checked around and said, we have Blanding's turtles, one of those protected species. Maybe that will be the key. It's happened before that, some owl or some creature will stop some things. So we worked on that. It didn't really go very far, but it was one of those things that we were attempting to say, there's many reasons why this should not go forward.
Right.
Blanding's turtle was a possibility.
It was a sign of desperation.
But there were lots of other reasons it shouldn't go forward. Mostly, the real reason is because when you bring in locomotives, which carry 1,000 gallons of fuel, of diesel fuel, and you bring in auto unloading means you're bringing thousands and thousands of automobiles from the factory, and then you're bringing trucks in to ship them out. You've got a lot of activity and a lot of toxic material just above, and the water table at some points is just 3 feet below the surface. And so this is a real potential hazard for the drinking water of both Littleton and Ayr.
And not to mention when you built that facility, you would essentially, I think it was 1.5 million of asphalt that would be laid over that area, and that would create an impervious surface.
We talk about it was a 56-acre plot, and I don't know how much of that was going to be paved, but a very large section. So
and you would create runoff back into the water.
So it's not a small operation at all.
Okay, so to summarize this, it's a lot of knocking on doors of agencies. There was a lot of disappointment amidst sympathies, but there was a lot of, we feel for you, but sorry, there was nothing we could do. Right. But you did eventually find a solution.
We did.
And that is something that we will talk about in part 2 of the series. Stay tuned.
Thank you.